Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Please subscribe to our videos on YouTube and like this video if you find it useful. This is a review of the Jiusko Tourbillon, or one of their tourbillons. This is a Chinese watch brand, and this is a Chinese tourbillon. And why do I like to review Chinese tourbillons once in a while? Well, first of all, I get curious what's going on in the world of Chinese tourbillons. There used to be no Chinese tourbillons. There used to be watches called tourbillons that weren't tourbillons, and the Chinese started making tourbillons, and then Chinese started to make more tourbillons, up to the point where Chinese tourbillons, it's not a matter of being good or not. They looked pretty nice, they didn't break that often, and they were actually relatively affordable. And so what I like to do from time to time on aBlogtoWatch is choose some type of affordable Chinese tourbillon and see what can you get for a fraction of the price of a Swiss tourbillon. So what does the cheapest Swiss tourbillon cost? Well, not sure exactly. It's definitely not 100,000. I'd say 100,000 is probably the average price of a Swiss tourbillon. I'd say you could probably get a tourbillon for maybe 50 grand or so. I don't know if it's the tourbillon you'd want, but you could probably get a Swiss tourbillon for 50 grand, maybe a little bit less. Here you have a tourbillon that's probably a little bit more desirable than the entry-level Swiss tourbillon. And the price on Amazon for this particular watch right now is $2,560. And that's by no means the cheapest of the Chinese tourbillons, but this one has some other things that come with it which are kind of nice. And one of the things that I like to sort of judge when I talk about Chinese tourbillons is the complications that come with it. Do they make sense? I always like to make fun of a lot of the sort of complications that sort of, you know, are part of these watches. I'm actually going to open up the strap there so you can see the back better. It's certainly machine finished, but it's not bad. For the price, it's definitely not bad. So I was going back to the idea that a lot of these watches have sort of funky complications that don't make a lot of sense. And this one actually made a lot of sense, right? So you have the tourbillon. It's not just a tourbillon, it's also a flying tourbillon. And it's a quite large diameter tourbillon. And it's also my understanding, if the details are correct, a 4 hertz tourbillon in terms of the frequency of the balance wheel. And a lot of times tourbillons, even the Swiss ones, are 3 hertz or even less. So the fact that it's a 4 hertz tourbillon, I think that's pretty cool. So what are the complications? Well, you have a power reserve indicator. I'll get to that in a second. Then you have a day-night indicator, and then you have the time. And so the day-night indicator is, of course, pretty simple. It's simply an AM/PM indicator that goes along with the hands. Now, the power reserve indicator is not something new for a tourbillon watch, and it's probably not something new for a Chinese tourbillon watch, but this is the first Chinese tourbillon watch I've had that has a power reserve indicator, and that's really important because it's one of my favorite complications because it's very useful, and it's also interesting to see that addition of what's a very useful complication on what is a manually wound movement. What's interesting about the power reserve indicator, and this is one of those kind of Chinese things, is you see the scale, right? And the scale sort of goes from here all the way, you know, it's more than a half circle, but not a whole circle, right? And so when you fully wind the watch up, I'm not going to do it all the way, but the limiter basically stops you at about 3/4. So even though the scale goes all the way, I don't actually think you can wind the watch all the way, or else you'll break it. So it'll actually go a little bit further than that to be fully wound, and then it won't really go anymore. So, yeah, there we go. So that's it. That's as high as the power reserve indicator gets. That's kind of funny because, you know, it looks like you're never fully wound, right? So you have to know that, like, that's the limit, everyone. And I guess they designed the scale to look the way it did for some type of aesthetic purpose. Apparently you have a real alligator strap, which is nice. The case is about 42.5 millimeters wide in steel, and the bezel is actual 18 karat gold, which is cool. You can see some little sort of laser engraving on the side there. It's kind of, what is that, like a Greco-Roman kind of aesthetic, which is kind of nice. And I like here this design element here where it looks like there's some texture there on the case back, as though you're supposed to like screw it or something like that. Crystal is sapphire on both sides, so you know you actually don't have a terrible watch. It's actually something which is kind of nice. It's even desirable as a watch, and I actually like wearing. So let me put this guy on. My newest Chinese tourbillon. I don't know what it is. I get excited about Chinese tourbillons. I'm just curious, kind of like what happens. So there it is, the Jiusko tourbillon. And again, their tourbillons are the the highest sort of level of watch from this brand. They make inexpensive quartz watches, and they make some other mechanical watches. But the Tourbillon, now you're talking. This is the Lexus of Jiusko's. Legibility isn't that bad, actually. The thing doesn't look terrible. It's still definitely a Chinese watch. You know, when I see it, I think Chinese. What I'd like to see is Chinese watches with tourbillons get to the point where they at least look like Japanese watches. I keep telling the designers, I said, stop putting stuff on the dial. Stop making everything skeletonized. The fact that this has a dial, it's relatively simple. There's actual gold in it. It's a cool flying tourbillon. All the complications make sense. That says a lot to me in my book about sort of, you know, where this is, and the fact that, you know, they say the retail price is what is like $6,500, but you know, yours for $2,500. Basically, that's on Amazon. So I would say that the price of this is $2,560. Pretty good value, actually. Pretty good value. Again, it's a Chinese tourbillon, but if you want a tourbillon and you're fascinated by it and you can't get anywhere near to affording a Swiss or European tourbillon, you know what? Get a Chinese tourbillon. You'll get 80% of the experience. You may not have people going up to you, grabbing your wrist, giving you lots of like watch nerd cred, but it's a fun thing, and you know, it's an easy way to get something interesting and cool without having to sort of break the bank. And again, I'm always fascinated as how Chinese tourbillons are getting. So this one is pretty good. Again, you don't have a huge amount of hand finishing and super cool detailing and stuff like that, and perfect elegance and refinement as you would have in a Swiss watch. They do not really compare Chinese and Swiss tourbillons, but you do get a lot of the experience for a fraction of the price, and these are definitely fun if you are the type of brave watch lover that wants to go and find some of these things. There's definitely some gems out there, and this is probably one of them. Again, this is the Jiusko limited edition tourbillon. I don't even necessarily know if there's a specific name for it. When we do the review, we'll have the reference number, but there it is, and you can see more on aBlogtoWatch soon. Thanks.